Good afternoon. Oh, I'm sure some of you were in here earlier. Hey, she gets it right there. All right. You. Good afternoon. Oh, come on. We're in Portugal. We're towards the end of a really awesome conference. There's more coffee over here if you need it. Come on, let's try this again. Good afternoon. Fantastic. All right, so who was here for my opening? Handful of you? All right, decent number of you. So I talked about the ability and the need to understand the entirety of the stack and to understand so much more than just your little bitty niche when you're doing your development. And our next speaker really embodies that. So from DevOps to security to all types of different things that integrate with your applications and really talking about smart cities, please welcome the person who started the developer program at Cisco, DevNet, Susie. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. Thank you. So today I'm going to talk about something that you've probably heard a lot about, smart cities. And I'm sure everybody has their own definition, but let's talk through what it could really mean in the context of full stack. But first I want to start out by telling you a little bit about my family. So as you can see, I'm Korean American. But I have a very large family, and I have a very large European family. And this is my family. My husband is Greek, and so we have extended family in Greek. I'm in those pictures. But does this family look like your family? So we have my grandmother, my grandfather, my aunts and uncles, my cousins, and all of their children as well. And so it's a multi-generational family. And if you look at this multi-generation family, then there's a lot of things that they need to think about. They're a very close family. Some of our family, my cousin and his wife and kids live in one apartment in one building, and the other apartment is where his brother and his family live. Another apartment is where his parents live. People live together. But the tough question that they need to ask themselves is, for our children, where should our children get educated? Where should our children have their careers? Can they do it here in Greece? Or do they have to move to other places? This is a tough question that everybody needs to ask. And of course, they want their family to stay together. But it's something that we need to ask. And my premise is that a smart city can help create the opportunities that we need in the local regions to create, again, all of the businesses and improve lives right where they are. So there's two questions that I'm going to want to answer today. So one is, what is a smart city? And what makes a city smart? So if we take a look at the first question, we'll just start with it and say, what is a smart city? A smart city engages society, culture, businesses, and the government to solve city challenges and improve lives of everybody who lives there, including the elderly, including the children, not just the technically elite. And if we say, what makes a city smart, then we can talk about some of the technology. Of course, it's about digitizing the city. And you can picture that your transportation systems, your trains, should have train schedules that get on time and tell you when they're coming so that you can plan your commute accordingly. But wouldn't it be even smarter if it told you when your kids get on the train to go to school, they made it safely to school? Another level of smart. Or if you have traffic monitoring, it's great to know what's going on with traffic in the city, but isn't it even better if there's an emergency response situation and then it can guide people so that the ambulance services and others can get around okay? So there's different levels, and what a smart city does is it digitally transforms the infrastructure, but then adds application and intelligence that can really create these new experiences. And one thing that I want to point out, especially in Europe, but as well as globally, is that a historic city can be a smart city. It's not just for the brand new cities and the brand new buildings and the brand new things that get created. Of course, it's for all those. But it's also to preserve and understand the history and the culture and to respect that and to make sure they get digitized in the way that they need to do what they can. Now, we're on the full stack stage, so many of you are developers. And I have to say, with developers, you've been empowered, and you can write incredible software applications. You've been empowered to write mobile applications that everybody uses every day, cloud applications that can span and use cloud resources at the snap of your fingers. But in addition, what I want to challenge you on is how can you solve problems that impact people? And let's take a look at this, the idea of a storm. When a storm happens, wouldn't you as a developer like to create applications that can help this? And just think about what you would create to help this situation.
The storm is coming. We've seen it on the news, and it's going to be a big one. Before the storm, everyone wants to know where it will hit. How high will the water rise? Will my house flood? What supplies will I need? Will we have to evacuate? And then the storm hits. We've seen this before. Some people stay, some go. Uncertainty is everywhere. When will emergency services reach me? Is my home okay? And then the storm is gone. Left in the wake are impassable roads, damaged infrastructure, and overturned lives. The recovery is on, and technology can help rebuild. The question for you is, how will technology improve this story? How will you help?
When an unfortunate situation like that hits, one of the most important things is communication. One thing that Cisco does in these emergencies is they have a tactical operations team. So when you have this situation, we'll actually pull in a truck to provide those communication services so people can report that they're safe. That's great for starters, but what would you as developers want, and what does that smart city really look like as you take that forward? Ideally, what would happen in the smart city is that the community is going about living their lives. Then you have some weather monitoring in place, and then that weather monitoring, once it spots that something may be happening, then it can send that information to people's homes. As people are preparing in their homes, then of course the retailer should know as well to get ready. And as the storm research, because people are going to go and be buying food and supplies to deal with this. And if it does get worse and people need to evacuate, then the roads and the transportations need to be smart as well as we get that out. And unfortunately, emergency services may need to happen, and then those need to be able to come through and be able to help people where it matters. People need to communicate, and as they're coming out of this, there's food and supplies, restocking everything, and rebuilding the infrastructure once again. So you as developers need to develop this. And as we look at cities, we can say to ourselves, how could a city become a smart city? Well, there's actually phases that we can go through. So if we look at the phases of the smart city, the first step is just building connectivity and coverage. So as we know, networking is key. People need to connect. More and more devices and sensors, everything needs to be connected. And by the way, you don't just get done once you've connected something, because new technologies, 5G and others, come out. And then what you really want to do is be able to build this ongoing connectivity as more capabilities come about. The second stage is where you start to get these core services. So you start to get a core service like your transportation service, your bus schedules coming online, right? So you start to get these conveniences that come with these core services. But then the third phase beyond that is when you really start to look at that as a platform. You get intelligence across the city. It's when, once again, the roadways, the trains, the ambulances, healthcare services all start to be able to talk together. And that's the next part of a smart city. Now, if we try to think about that, what's the technology that underlies that? So first of all, there's the infrastructure of a smart city. And the infrastructure are devices that people use, devices that are around, sensors, a cloud infrastructure. But it also includes the city infrastructure. The roads and the buildings themselves are included in a smart city infrastructure. And then applications that can be built on those, mobile apps, IoT apps, cloud apps, and a new form of distributed applications that can work across all of those. And the users are the people. It's the operators, the ambulance drivers, okay? It's the people who work in the stores, the businesses, and developers themselves. And what happens is the way applications meet infrastructure changes in a smart city, but provides huge opportunity for developers. But if we take a look at all of this, really core to it all is the network. If you take a look at the network connects all of these things, the people, the applications, and the infrastructure in really big ways. The network provides more than just connectivity. It can provide connectivity, security. It can provide lots of value-added services on top of that. And a big shift that happens is that the network itself is now programmable. And I'm going to go even further and say that the network is the operating system of a smart city. And you're like, operating system of a smart city, what could that mean? Well, let's take a look and let's compare it to the operating system of a computer, which is something that we're all used to. So the operating system of a computer is looking at the interface. This is just the definition of the operating system, an interface between computer applications and computer hardware. Well, what's the operating system of a smart city? An interface between smart city applications and smart city infrastructure. If we look next, the operating system of a computer manages computer hardware and software resources for computer programs. Meanwhile, the operating system of a smart city manages smart city hardware and software resources for smart city applications. And finally, the operating system of a computer provides common services for computer programs. But the operating system of a smart city provides common application and infrastructure services for smart city applications. Let's look at this a little bit further. So we talked about this, where, again, how applications and infrastructure meet. But let's take a look at the full stack OS of a smart city. And as we bring that together, what we see is that, once again, at the base level, we have the smart city infrastructure. And then we have a set of smart city infrastructure services, as well as smart city application services that allow smart city applications to be deployed across that infrastructure. And then we have the users and the operators of the smart city itself. And let's dive in a little deeper. So if we take a look at the infrastructure itself, of course it includes cloud and edge computing and mobile computing. It includes a programmable network. But it also now includes cameras and sensors, transportation systems, digitized buildings. So that's all included in the smart city infrastructure. And this infrastructure is then exposed as infrastructure services so that you can get connectivity. You can get location services, traffic monitoring. You can also get security services for identity, access control, threat defense. These are all services that can come from the smart city infrastructure. And then for application services, we want the ability to deploy containers and microservices to ensure that that deployment and the ongoing monitoring takes place. And then we have the smart city applications themselves, which include mobile apps, IoT apps, multi-cloud apps that use both public and private cloud, and then a set of distributed apps, applications that work across devices, sensors, edge, and the cloud. And let's take a look at the distributed apps one more time. So in these distributed applications, then what matters is that there's a different type of computing that can be done in the cloud, in the public cloud, as well as a different type of computing that can be done in the private cloud and the type of data that it can access, as well as computing that can be done at the edge with IoT, with sensors. And if you take a look at things like machine learning, then there's a set of model building that you may want to do in the cloud where you can access all the resources that you need as you build your models. But if you want to do things like object recognition and then work against proprietary databases and private information, you can do that in your private cloud. But if you need that real-time application with cameras on the edge and then being able to really adapt in real time, then you want that edge processing. You want to do that object detection at the edge. And you can actually do that with edge computing, where you can actually really make these things work together. And then having systems that allow you to deploy these containers and microservices across this and use things like GPU acceleration or different types of hardware acceleration is key to get the performance that you want. So there's a lot of technical opportunities, and this idea of distributed applications and computing has been there for a long time. But for us developers, it's a very exciting time now because we can access all of these now, and we have the tools, so it's very exciting. And one thing is, as we're trying to solve innovations and solve these problems, is that diversity drives innovation. When you want to create that best solution to help your cities, to help the community, to improve lives, you want to improve all different kinds of people into how you create that solution. Include the bus drivers, include the elderly, include the children, include startups, include entrepreneurs, include established enterprise developers. All of that together lets you create the big innovations that you need to go forward. And if we take a look at that innovation ecosystem, it includes universities, the government, businesses, startups, and developers. And when all of this comes together, you can actually solve these problems that we have. Now let's take a look at a smart city, the Port of Rotterdam, that has achieved this.
It's the largest port in Europe. A port that has moved over 232 million tons in the first 6 months of 2018. The port is also a gathering place for innovation, where startups, students, companies, and the government collaborate. This is a story about how the city of Rotterdam is making life better for its people, using digital transformation and the Internet of Things. The Internet of Things and sensors not only move ships, they also track the goods from the port to destinations throughout Europe. And the port is also looking ahead, planning its own disruption by thinking about the future of shipping, goods, and services. From a container on a ship, into the port, across a city, and into your home. The Internet of Things is working to bring you a better life. It all starts with innovators like you. What will you build?
So this showcases an example where these different types of entities did come together to create solutions, to digitize the infrastructure and provide value at all different levels. So if I come back to those first two questions where I said, what is a smart city? Here's an answer to it. What is a smart city? It safely connects people in city services. It enables smart city applications on a smart city infrastructure. And it provides economic growth in the area, and it improves lives. And then if we also talk about what makes the city smart, it's about machine intelligence and human intelligence brought together. It's about a diverse ecosystem of innovation, and it empowers developers to create. So the key is that as we're in this area where we're creating a smart city infrastructure that's exposed to developers, developers really hold the keys. And there's a new type of innovation that developers can do in this new paradigm that sits right in front of us. And if I go back to this question of where do our next generation, our children, where do they need to grow up? Can they grow up where they are in the cities where they live, or do they have to move away? I'll say that my nephews and nieces, my daughter, they can grow up and live where they are. They can improve the community around them because the smart city digitizes their infrastructure and provides that business opportunity and technical opportunity in front of them. So we have more resources about this at developer.cisco.com/websummit to look more at the smart city story. But the challenge that I have for all of you is, what will you build? Thank you.